Hi, welcome to my discussion on chapters 312, 313, and 314 of Tower of God. So for my general thoughts, as I've said time and time again, this setup arc is just amazing. I felt like there's been an upturn in quality ever since the latter half of the Hidden Floor arc, with SAU tackling many loose ends, tightly storyboarding large-scale action sequences, weaving long-term character threads, introducing tons of interesting characters, building the Zahad Empire's hierarchical structures, and foreshadowing Season 3. These 3 chapters have just been no different in that regard. Before I start thoroughly breaking down the specific sections of these chapters, I should note that I'll be devoting the first half of this video to Rachel and Bam's toxic relationship. There's been a lot of anger directed at SAU for not only Rachel's manipulative shenanigans, but also due to some misunderstandings about the writing of Bam. I'd like to cover both arguments in more detail, and with that being said, let's dive right into the discussion. Okay, so after the current chapter released, I've heard a portion of the fandom call Bam out for not hurting Rachel or falling gullibly to her schemes. They've been saying that he hasn't gone through any growth since Season 1, so I'd just like to go over why I strongly disagree with at least the second complaint, and explain the stages in which their relationship has evolved, specifically focusing on Bam's perspective and handling of these confrontations. In Season 1, Bam's involvement in their relationship can best be summed up by the notion of pure naivety. He earnestly believed Rachel was his friend, and chasing after her obsessively was not an ugly display, but an affectionate demonstration of his familial love for the person who raised him. Bam didn't even consider that there could be an explanation for her disappearance that didn't align with his expectations of her character, so he was understandably blindsided when Rachel chose to betray his trust and attempt to murder him in cold blood. This led to what I like to call the emo-vile stage of his personality, opening himself up to manipulation by Thug through his feelings of anger and uncertainty. In the Train City confrontation, Bam reacts to Rachel's perplexing intentions and actions with the rage of an immature child. He can't comprehend why she would harm his friends, and rejects their parent-child bond. So he lashes out and utilizes extreme force to make her see reason. He wasn't leaving without Rachel, even if she resisted. However, we eventually see that a part of that naivety and innocence still remains within Bam, when he fails to commit to seizing Rachel. Honestly, I don't think Bam's naivety will ever fully dissipate, and it is a consistent issue with his judgment. But to put this into perspective, remember that Bam was essentially a blank slate that absorbed Rachel's teachings in the cave, so this mentor or mother-like figure portraying these set ideals so thoroughly is a hard thing for an innocent kid like Bam to swallow. And then in the Hidden Floor arc and the current arc, Bam reacts to Rachel with frustration and, more importantly, apathy. He's now not willing to understand Rachel's point of view because his reforming ideologies are starting to set in stone through his continued exploration of the tower. He still does not understand her perspective, but chooses to use these words to explain why she's wrong. Now, these words are dismissive and intentionally one-sided because Bam isn't interested in her way of thinking or the circumstances that led to these unfortunate chain of events. He's ignoring it and instead trying to imbue the lessons he's received back onto her without much success. Bam also uses his superior power to dismiss her combativeness, exemplifying a slightly ignorant need to change their power dynamic. He wants to tell her why she's wrong, but this is like a therapist telling a patient the error of their ways when they know very little about their circumstances. It doesn't work, especially when the recipient is completely unwilling to talk properly. Blind teaching is the equivalent to no teaching. If anything, it makes Bam look narrow-minded to Rachel, who's clearly suffered from abuse, indicated in the panels early on in the story with her being grabbed violently by the hair. You know, she is not naturally talented, smart, or sociable like Bam. She isn't the one with a clear destiny. Likely, all she sees is a naive boy with destiny thrown upon his shoulders without completely comprehending its meaning or significance to those around him. Now moving forward from this chapter and into future arcs, Bam will probably need to reconcile that he's going in blind to a matter that requires more delicacy. The major change that will need to occur is Rachel or someone else giving out that information on their shared past, why it affects Rachel in such an aggressively toxic way, and is there any way to meet at the middle? It's a progression in awareness of himself, which leads to awareness of others. Filling the gaps in his knowledge would open a dialogue between them, where there was none before. But as seen in chapter 313, Rachel is not willing to let Bam's attachment go just yet. This is a toxic relationship in the purest sense, as both parties are not capable of resolving and moving on from each other, no matter how much they detriment their lives. I'd also like to quickly highlight Rachel's flaws, which are many obviously, but I'd like to confine them to these 3 chapters. While she may be right that the tower promotes ordinary people to do insanely vicious acts to move up the tower, she's ignorant of the fact that these actions have severe consequences. Just because many individuals do something doesn't necessarily mean it's right or justified. Additionally, she's incapable of viewing Bam without the knowledge of his past, which she then uses to manipulate him. I can't deny that she tends to veer close to plot device territory, but a problem plaguing the Tower of God fandom is that people are unwilling to look at the broader picture. Why exactly does she want Bam to chase her? Why was she abused as a child? Why did she care for Bam in the first place? What's her relation to Hedon, and is there a much larger scheme boiling with her as the pawn? The fandom dismisses these notions because they hate her. When you despise a character so viciously, it's natural to want them out of the story as quickly as possible. But everyone forgets that she is the story. Bam and Rachel's relationship is the emotional core of Tower of God. You take that away and Bam's character becomes empty. This is not a criticism of SAU's writing and more just a matter of the fact. This is how he wanted this relationship to go. This is how he centered Tower of God. You can't get rid of Rachel until you resolve the conflict between them. So yeah, while it may not be totally clear on a first read through, I hope I provided a valuable summary of the relationship to anyone still trying to figure it all out. I admit it's not easy to fully grasp. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the other interesting components of these chapters. So I've been loving the newfound characterization of Mansheni through this clash with Jinx and Ha. Initially, I just found it amusing that she had complete disregard for the safety of her battalion, thinking it was more a display of her callousness towards her brethren, but now we find out that she's actually been attempting to draw Jinsang's attention non-verbally. I guess the soldiers probably just think this is how far wide a ranker's Shinsu control can affect a battlefield, which is honestly a fairly clever way of disguising her real behaviour. Like, she can quite literally hide her conversation behind the lightning blast of her spear skills. This really reinforces her conniving but playful depiction when Yuri confronted her during early season 2. Also, side note, she's kinda cute now. Her previous designs made her look all stiff and motherly, but SAU has blessed us with many panels of her kiddish side. The best part was when her antics reminded me totally of Yuri's humour, like switching the subject from her serious intentions to praising how strong Jinsang Ha is. Honestly, this combative dance between them has been just so fun, and in any other chapter it would probably take all of my attention, but there's just so much to unpack lately that I need to talk about other stuff, unfortunately. Speaking of her goal, she reveals to Jinsang the 3 orders from Zahad, and as I suspected, Adori's Royal Guard and specifically the Caliban Squadron have found a way to break the laws of the Hell Train in order to mass murder the regulars. I wonder if we'll get like an explanation for that, because in my mind the only solutions would be to disassemble the Hell Train into segments or override whatever script enforces the rules. We'll have to wait and see. Oh, and one more thing. Notice that Manshani refers to Zahad still as her father, indicating that her loyalty has not totally shifted. I don't believe she's a complete double agent working against him, at least not yet. What's more interesting about this situation is that Manshani says Zahad has noticed Thug's association with Bam, and is preparing the elimination of all those surrounding him. I think this is the first time that Bam, and not Viol, has been recognized as an immediate threat to the tower, even if Zahad is still keeping his identity under wraps. It's just an interesting shift for Bam's persona in the tower, and possibly his fame. And because of all this, we get Yu Han-sung, who's nonchalantly sipping drip-feed coffee as always. It's been so long since we revisited the Floor of Tests, and his post-Starter World character. So this was an unexpected surprise. I wonder if anyone else has noticed the disparity of size between the floating area of Tests and Zahad's Royal Messenger ship. It's crazy to think that Evankell's testing grounds was once this massive entity in the sky when we first entered the tower, and now it just looks completely tiny in comparison. We also received new character introductions, so Red Bruba fills in another spot in Zahad's chain of command. He's the family messenger that delivers royal decrees of the Empire and has an awesome design. Like, SAU strikes a really nice balance between regal and alien, being sort of reminiscent of illustrations depicting messengers from Hell. I've admittedly got a thing for like neat eyeball designs, so his intricate emerald irises grabbed me immediately. And then we've got the 3 rankers from the 4th Squadron of the Royal Guard, which is apparently led by Calivan, a human collector. Immediately I noticed that Tinker Yolch, Yolka, and the other unnamed servant of Calivan all share really similar appearances, with silver hair, pale skin, and blue and black clothing colour schemes. I'm guessing they belong to a minor family and specialise in dirty work such as human trafficking, which kind of makes Zahad or possibly Adori's recruitment of them really interesting. I hadn't considered that the Royal Guard may actually have a variety of squadrons with different specializations, but I honestly love this idea anyways. And Yolka's Shinsu control is kind of odd. This might be obvious to some, but I get the feeling that his ugly purple aura suggests potentially that he's possessing a human, or it's a human forming Shinsu ability, which might be why the 3rd servant has not actually been named yet. Maybe it's not even a real person, but like an illusion of some sort. I don't know, because SAU is definitely setting up the Calivan Squadron to be one of the major adversaries of the last train stop. So I don't think we're probably going to get an answer at this point. But anyways, as I've said before, I really enjoy learning more about the different positions Empire rankers hold, because it breathes life into the government that has historically been underrepresented, in my opinion, with the layers of the hierarchical structures not really being expanded upon much. An example of a series that does this way better would be One Piece, in which the Marine organization has been expertly crafted over its runtime, with big arcs like Marineford filling in the minor gaps that we didn't know about. I presume the upcoming Princess War arc is why SAU has suddenly started introducing all these different titles. You know, he's preparing us for a war, and without a proper hierarchical structure, a war will make no sense to a reader, because you have no clue what type of battalions there are, who are the soldiers, who runs what. You don't know any of that, so it doesn't work without proper structure. So I'm glad that he's actually introducing all these different titles and positions right now, instead of like as the war is going on. And in that vein, Kell is finally unveiled after years of teasing. I can safely say I did not expect him to look like that though. For starters, it's possible that Kell may technically be the first trans character in the manhwa, because we see the stitching covering up his or her body, implying they've received some sort of reconstructive surgery. Not to mention that SAU stated in the blog post that Kell was originally supposed to be a man, and he or she is not fully female. Now, I'm not going to definitely say anything until the next batch of chapters, but it'd be an interesting decision by SAU nonetheless. I mean, there's also a lot of other plausible alternative theories, so don't get me wrong about this. I'm not making anything certain here. Just making some almost baseless assumptions for now. What we do know is that Kell is currently ranked 60 in the tower, and the character design is freaking badass. Like, it's very different to the burly, quiet figure I had in mind, but really cool nonetheless. She also possesses the power of the freaking ancients, and it looks like Rak. Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I love that we're getting more information on the ancient species Rak belongs to, and it's so fitting that a character like Kell has this type of power set, so I can't wait to see how this all works out. Because the Caliban servants they appear surprisingly confident, leading me to think that they probably have a protection failsafe on hand or are just insanely powerful. I'm really interested to see if maybe we'll get a rematch between these enemies here. And maybe Kell just stomped them completely to show the difference between then and now. And holy shit, the administrator of the test floor appeared. Honestly, I forgot he was even on the floor still. Like, if you don't remember, this administrator confronted Bam during Season 1. But okay, the question is, does this administrator have morphing abilities like the one belonging to the Floor of Death? Like, I doubt we'll get a fight with the Caliban unit because you'd have to be pretty stupid to challenge an administrator, and I don't really think they're the type to fight battles they can't win conclusively. But anyways, it seemed to show affection towards you and Kell. Well, at least it transported them both to the warp gate, which is probably leading to the last Hell Train stop. So it makes me question, how far-reaching is the administrator's gaze? It sounds like it intimately knows what's happening in the tower at this very moment. So hopefully we get an explanation on their roles within the floor system soon, and how they communicate between each other, if at all. Okay, moving on. So Hoquin is actually struggling against Androssi. Like, you know a character is on the defensive when their monologues consist primarily of compliments to the other's abilities. This has been an unexpectedly solid fight, in my opinion. Like, I've enjoyed the focus on teamwork, with Hirien utilizing her Red Dwarf abilities and her Scout Observer to guide Androssi's movements, as Beta hides behind the chaos until the moment to strike. What's not surprising in the slightest is that Androssi's Shinsu forms are freaking love heart whips. Like, that's almost too perfect for her character. But it's a pretty formidable long-range assault when you consider the Bongbong's ability to flash to different points of the battlefield. And Hirin, or whatever her name is, does something interesting for once. Like, I know she has a lot of fans, but I found her character consistently boring. SAU's writing of her is like Rachel amplified tenfold. We almost know nothing about her, and it's likely that that's not going to change anytime soon. Not to mention, all she ever does is say some foreboding line and then disappear behind the more important, stronger characters for chapters on end. I'm sorry, but a cute design does not make her suddenly immune to these criticisms. But getting off this tangent, I think this deal she's proposing to Hoquin is actually really intelligent, and hopefully it will quash the argument that Hoquin is somehow weak. I'm glad SAU reminded everybody that his Slayer form is not yet complete. We still have one more part of him that isn't there yet. And every time he's gotten the part, he's grown immensely stronger. So this whole idea that he's somehow this weak, laughable Slayer is just silly to me. He's not even fully complete yet. How can you possibly say that? And even then, he's taking on Androssi Beta, and Heroine all at once in this sort of coordinated attack. It'd be hard for anybody, even Bam, to defend against something like that, where a person can predict your moves, tell the people who are attacking where they're going to attack and how they're going to attack, and then thwart that. Like, it's hard for anybody to really defend against that type of tactic. So yeah, it annoys me when people they use something like this fight as a way of saying that, oh, Hokun's weak, when he's just not. But I have to say that the artwork for these 3 chapters, and especially this fight, is just phenomenal. Like, I love the way SAU storyboarded the instant appearance of Beta behind Androssi. The framing of the background pillars and the downward facing angle really enhanced the feeling that Hokun is frantically switching his gaze in a quick momentum shift as the duo sort of come crashing down into him. There's a sense of scale and weight to these attacks that I haven't felt from SAU's illustrations in a while. And finally, Ship, Lasu, Hatsu, and Lori are back. This is so hype to me because I can't get enough of the Season 1 crew. I just hope there's less tension this time around and we can get some sort of fun banter, because the Name Hunt Station was just really aggressively toxic to me, and it just soured me because we hadn't seen these characters in so long, and then they're portrayed in a very harsh light through Androssi's fault, obviously, but still, there was still this confrontation that it was hurting me. So I wanted to see them, happy and trying to interact with Bam's crew once again. Also, I think most people have probably clued this together, but the army of ships with these Joker-like symbols on them is obviously the Caliban Squadron, since it was mentioned that Caliban himself was going to the last train stop. Not to mention, it just totally fits their general aesthetic and their human trafficking work. SAU has said the scale of this conflict will increase with the introduction of this squadron. So it's going to be interesting to see how this squadron of Dory's Royal Guard will impact this confrontation at the last train stop. Okay, so these chapters were really, really, really good, and this entire setup arc has just been amazing so far. Hopefully we'll get some satisfying payoffs for everything as we enter Season 3, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what SAU does with all these new characters and all this new lore and all these new systems. It's just really good stuff. Thanks for watching, and sorry about the delay on this video, but it'll be a bi-weekly for sure next time.